In other news, Jerry Seinfeld will never be a real man.
I always wanted to be.
I didn't ask your pronouns before we began.
I've always wanted to be a real man. I never made it.
Masculinity is not a gender, it's a measuring of itself against femininity. Therefore, it cannot define itself except in relation to something more or less masculine. And as long as there are men who are more masculine, a man's masculinity will always be in danger. Masculinity is relative. One might say that femininity is relative as well, but it's not. If you were to do nothing but exist, that would be considered the most feminine thing that you could possibly do. The moment you start working or doing or being mechanical in any comparative way whatsoever, even if it means putting on makeup, masculinity has entered the chat. So anyway, Jerry Seinfeld will never be a real man because it's a contest, and other more masculine men who are cosplaying masculinity at a level that is way out of Jerry's league will always outrank him. Kind of like how rich people are always competing against each other. In fact, it's exactly that. Because wealth is relative. It's all relative. Masculinity, all of it. Everything that has to do with masculinity is relative.
I really thought when I was in that era, again, it was JFK, it was Muhammad Ali, it was Sean Connery, Howard Cosell. You can go all the way down there. That's a real man. I want to be like that someday.
JFK, Muhammad Ali, Sean Connery, Howard Cosell. These are all men who have had to compete with other men within their specific category to win the titles of real men. JFK won the presidency over other men. Muhammad Ali had to physically fight other men in order to get his title. Sean Connery won a very iconic role that allowed him to represent the idealized version of masculinity and become, in a sense, a poster child for what it means to be a man. Howard Cosell's career was built on judging and critiquing other men in their pursuits of masculinity, i.e. sports. And in order to do this, his perceived masculinity was always on display. Now, remember what I said. When I said masculinity is not a gender, it's a measuring of itself against femininity. Let's talk about how these men's relationships to their feminine counterparts affected their roles. JFK was a notorious womanizer. So was Muhammad Ali. And Sean Connery's iconic James Bond character is especially defined by his dealings with lots of gorgeous women. Now, I don't really know much about how Howard Cosell dealt with women in his personal life, but I do know that with his wife, once she passed away, this is what it says on his Wikipedia page. Once she passed away, he withdrew from the public eye, and then he passed away shortly after. Masculinity cannot exist without a foundation of femininity to stack itself upon. This is why Jerry said this.
Of course it does. But there's another element there that I think is the key element, and that is an agreed upon hierarchy, which I think is absolutely vaporized in today's moment.
Okay.
And I think that is why people lean on the horn and drive in the crazy way that they drive. Because we have no sense of hierarchy. And as humans, we don't really feel comfortable like that.
As a machine, Jerry doesn't feel comfortable like that. Jerry, like most masculine-minded people, believes that hierarchy, where everyone is ranked either above or below or in an otherwise linear fashion. Linear means line. He believes that this is how everything should be. But in that ranking, where would men fall? Where would they fall? In the ranking. If there was a ranking between men and women, where would they be? Exactly. Masculinity must be stacked on top of something in order for it to count, in the thing that it is always stacked on top of is femininity. Whatever is on the bottom is the feminine. Pun intended. Happy Pride, everyone. Anytime there is a hierarchy, whatever is on the bottom of the hierarchy is the more feminine thing. For example, Black people are the feminine to the white people's masculine. Poor people are the feminine to the rich person's masculine. Queer people are the feminine to the heterosexual cisgendered person's masculine. Disabled people are the feminine to the abled person's masculine. The feminine is the starting point. It's the place where everyone is the default loser. And the masculine, comparatively speaking, is the perpetual winner on the basis that it is willing to compete and is only beaten by a greater and more competitive masculine, and so forth and so on into infinity. So, long story short, it's not order that Jerry Seinfeld craves. It's a clear winner.
An agreed upon hierarchy.
An agreed upon hierarchy. Everyone must opt into this pretentious game of masculinity in order for it to be legitimate. If we are not willing to play, there cannot be a winner. And by default, we're all losers because there is no game. And there's nothing that anyone can do about it.
Hey, what the hell are other people supposed to do about that? Like, what are the rules here?
Now, what was it that I said about rules? When it comes to masculinity, following rules is very important. There are times to follow rules because it keeps everyone safe. And there are times where the only reason you're following rules is because you are opting into a game that is being played. And while Jerry's talking about crazy drivers may sound like he's concerned for the safety of others, the fact that he connects hierarchy to masculinity is code for wanting everyone to opt into a competitive game where the winner dominates. A zero-sum game where the pedestal is so elevated that there is no question as to who is more or less masculine than the other. And Jerry is a big fan of these kinds of dynamics. He likes scenarios where there is a clear winner and a clear loser. He said it himself that he's not a real man by comparison to other real men, but when you compare him to a teenage girl. Anyway, Jerry longs for dominant masculinity in the same way any fan of sports longs for the good old days of watching their favorite team go against a worthy rival. The excitement and opting in of everyone around them is just as important as the game itself. And if not enough people care about the masculinity competition, the only real losers become the people who do. The losers become the people who shill out meaningless, outdated advice about what it means to be masculine. The losers become the people who continue to compete in the imaginary masculine men Olympics. The real losers are the perpetual Pinocchios who long to become real boys one day. If no one is competitive, there is no game. What Jerry longs for is a good, hard, big, long, strong game. He wants to watch others dominate each other. He wants to be dominated and maybe dominate a few himself. He wants to compare his domination to others' dominations. He wants to tell others they're doing a good job and then have those others watch him dominate and tell him that he's doing a good job.
I like a real man.
There is no real man because masculinity is relative and it changes every day. It's an arms race. And Jerry will always miss the moment in his life where the arms race was most exciting, and that was when he was a child. It's just like how most people miss the games and the culture and the music of their youth. And so in this sense, Jerry will never be a man because he's a perpetual child, which is something that he says.
I never really grew up. You don't want to as a comedian because it's a childish pursuit.
And Jerry will never be a man because masculinity is relative. The end. Bye. And I will see you next time. Bye.